Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. Okay, today we're exploring a scenario that literally lives right at the intersection of childhood wonder and, well, absolute sheer terror. We're talking about opening a door that's been firmly shut for 65 million years. I mean, just imagine a world where that thud vibrating in your chest, or that distant roar isn't coming from a theme park speaker, it's a living, breathing dinosaur. It's the ultimate dream, right? But bringing the ancient giants of prehistory back to walk under modern skies, yeah, that brings up some massive logistical, biological, and ethical nightmares. So it really forces us to ask this incredibly heavy question. Could humanity actually handle the return of dinosaurs? At first glance, it sounds like the absolute greatest scientific discovery in human history. But the moment you strip away all that Hollywood magic and really think about it seriously, a pretty stark reality check sets in. Would our relentless obsession with wonder and pushing the boundaries of science become the very thing that destroys us?
Okay, let's dive into this with Section 1, the dream becomes reality, and the ensuing global shock.
Just imagine the very first leaked images hitting the internet. Maybe it's a newborn moving clumsily in a sterile enclosure, or a towering herbivore eating under artificial sunlight. The public reaction wouldn't just be excitement, it would be a total global shockwave. Social media would absolutely explode. You'd have transfixed adults and astonished children everywhere, watching mythology literally become reality. But beneath all that awe, investors would instantly smell unimaginable profit. I'm talking like $500 plushies in the gift shop kind of profit. Meanwhile, governments would plunge straight into a panic over national security. Scientists, bioethicists, military strategists, they'd all be scrambling to ask one thing: should this even exist?
Which brings us right to Section 2, biology and unpredictable behavior, or dropping ancient ecosystems into a modern world.
The sheer scale of precision engineering required just to keep these animals breathing is totally staggering. Dinosaurs aren't just large animals with exotic shapes, right? They are products of completely vanished ecosystems. We're not just building cages here, we're engineering heavy, humid air, cultivating sharp-smelling prehistoric ferns, and maintaining exacting temperature and humidity controls. Human engineers would have to perfectly mimic a world they barely even understand. And one tiny mistake in that atmospheric balance, well, it means stress, illness, aggression, or just total ecological collapse inside the park. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive gap between what we expect and what we'd actually get. On one side, we have the cinematic fantasy, movie villains, simple electric fences, roaring monsters. But on the other side is the biological reality. These wouldn't be monsters. They'd be living animals with incredibly complex ecosystem needs, unpredictable stress responses, and deeply ingrained ancient instincts. They defend territory. They react to fear. Some might be deceptively quiet until the exact wrong trigger sets them off. Which, of course, brings us to the predators, the absolute peak of public obsession. But let's define what a large predator actually is in this context. It's basically a concentration of muscle, teeth, instinct, and stress. A famous carnivore isn't some celebrity waving to tourists. It's a highly dangerous, instinct-driven animal trying to navigate a totally unnatural environment. If just one single enclosure fails, or one human makes a bad decision, the consequences aren't just a PR nightmare, they are catastrophic.
Moving on to Section 3, the architecture of containment, or, as it might more accurately be called, the illusion of control.
A real park like this would need a security architecture unlike anything on Earth. We're not just talking about pouring some thick concrete. It would require layered containment systems, AI-driven predictive monitoring, massive redundant power grids, fortified labs, biological quarantine zones, and heavily armed instant response teams. We'd literally be building a system actively designed to withstand the full, unpredictable force of living history. But here's the central irony. The more successful and complex the creation becomes, the more fragile the safety becomes. Because living systems are inherently dangerous, disaster is almost guaranteed at some point. It's a simple chain reaction. Step 1, an unpredictable storm knocks out the power. Step 2, a backup sensor fails in the dark. Step 3, a creature senses the change and escapes its routine. And Step 4, systemic chaos. You see, machines fail in predictable ways, but animals, they fail unpredictably. In seconds, a billion-dollar fortress can completely unravel. And honestly, the physical escape of a dinosaur might not even be the biggest threat. What happens if pathogens travel between ancient creatures in modern environments? This park wouldn't just exist in a vacuum, right? It would interact with the surrounding ecology. What happens to the local wildlife? What if ancient microbes or parasites cross the barrier into modern hosts, or vice versa? This would be an incredibly fragile ecological experiment where absolutely nothing stays perfectly sealed forever.
But despite all those terrifying risks, the money would just be impossible to ignore. Let's look at Section 4, Economics and Global Politics, and the birth of the global machine. A real, living dinosaur park would trigger an unprecedented global economic boom, practically overnight. Security and biotech sectors, they'd see rapid growth and basically infinite investment. Hospitality and airlines would pivot entirely to create these exclusive, luxury global destinations. And entertainment? Oh, it would be an absolute gold rush. Streaming documentaries, absurd merchandising, virtual reality experiences. It'd be the ultimate fusion of science and spectacle. But as history constantly shows us, whenever money moves faster than wisdom, trouble is never far behind.
And the political battlefield would be just as fierce. You'd have biosecurity agencies demanding oversight and defense ministries scrambling for intelligence. International courts would be totally paralyzed by legal questions, like who legally owns a resurrected species? Do modern animal welfare laws even apply to prehistoric clones? What about export controls or global liability if something goes horribly wrong? Power always follows life when life becomes rare and spectacular, and this would be the most spectacular life on the entire planet.
But beyond the money and beyond the politics lies the deepest dilemma of all. Here's Section 5, the ethical earthquake and the immense burden of creation.
Before we even think about opening the gates, we really have to ask ourselves, are we resurrecting the past, or are we merely manufacturing an approximation of it? If these dinosaurs are genetically engineered using modern DNA fragments to, fill in the gaps, how much of them is truly prehistoric and how much is just human invention? This would ignite a fierce philosophical debate. Some would argue it's an extraordinary reconstruction, while others would say calling it real doesn't actually make it historically authentic. It essentially becomes a massive global argument over identity and the very meaning of life.
So, the crucial point is perfectly captured right here. If humans are responsible for bringing life back, then humans are also responsible for every burden that life carries. Creating these animals is one thing, but creating creatures with absolutely no natural place in our modern world, that carries an enormous moral weight. Will they suffer from loneliness, environmental mismatch, unnatural confinement? We wouldn't just owe them existence, guys. We would owe them dignity.
This entire endeavor really rests on a razor's edge. Bringing us to our final part, Section 6, Brilliance, Arrogance, and Chaos, which ultimately serves as a reflection of humanity itself.
Let's be fair here and imagine the best-case scenario for a second. If it's built with extraordinary care and strict ethical oversight, a park like this could honestly be the greatest educational institution in history. Evolution suddenly becomes visible. The public's understanding of extinction deepens profoundly because they can see with their own eyes just how fragile life is. Conservation would gain this urgent global priority. It could inspire entire generations to truly respect biology and understand the limits of human control.
But as we know, every great scientific leap has a double edge. On one hand, we have the power to save, the ability to heal, educate, restore, and inspire. But directly mirroring it is the power to destroy. The exact same scientific breakthrough can tempt us, heavily commercialize life, lead to catastrophic overreach, and cause us to deeply misjudge the complexity of nature. The very same hand that restores can dangerously underestimate what it's just created.
Ultimately, a living dinosaur park would stand as a towering symbol of that exact duality. It would, as the quote says, a monument to brilliance and a test of humility. It would loudly declare that humanity believes it can literally reassemble life from the fragments of time itself. And while that belief is incredibly powerful, it is also deeply, deeply dangerous.
Which leaves us staring right into the eyes of an ancient predator, asking ourselves this final, haunting question. Have we truly become wiser, or only more powerful? If this explainer thrilled you, scared you, or even just made you think twice about the limits of science, please engage with the explainer. Drop a comment with your own wild what-if theory, and subscribe for more deep dives into these massive scenarios. Because trust me, our next topic might be even more impossible and even more unforgettable. Thanks so much for learning with me today.